Ethan Miller had always lived a quiet, almost invisible life in the small Arizona town he called home. The dry winds, dusty roads, and slow pace suited him, but the people weren't always kind. Born with a disability in his right leg, Ethan had spent most of his life enduring stares, whispers, and the casual cruelty of those who thought weakness was something to mock. Even as an adult, he carried himself with patience, keeping his head high and heart steady. Still, the loneliness often crept in, reminding him how different he felt from everyone else around him. One warm afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Ethan walked home from his shift at a small hardware store. He was tired, leaning slightly on his cane, moving at his usual steady pace. As he approached the corner of Maple Street, a group of teenage boys suddenly stepped into his path. Their smirks were familiar, and the tension in Ethan's chest grew. Before he could maneuver around them, one boy shoved him hard and sneered, "Move, cripple." Ethan stumbled and hit the ground, his palms scraping painfully against the rough gravel. The boys laughed and walked away without a second thought. For a moment, Ethan simply lay there, staring at the sky while dust settled around him. He could have shouted, argued, or cried out in anger, but he didn't. He had learned long ago that reacting only fueled them. So he slowly pushed himself up, brushed dirt off his clothes, and picked up his cane. A deep breath steadied him. He continued walking, each step a reminder of the insult that still burned in his mind. Yet he tried to force himself forward, pretending the cruelty didn't cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. A few blocks later, just as the neighborhood quieted and the evening breeze cooled the air, Ethan heard something faint, a soft sound almost swallowed by the rustling of leaves. It was a weak, trembling whimper, like someone crying softly for help. He paused and listened carefully. The sound came again. Curious and concerned, he followed it behind an old convenience store. There, next to a rusted dumpster, he found a tiny puppy curled into a shaking ball. The poor thing was painfully thin, ribs showing through matted fur, eyes dull with fear and exhaustion. Ethan felt his heart squeeze with sympathy. He knelt slowly, careful not to startle the little creature. The puppy tried to lift its head but didn't have the strength. It whimpered again, so softly it barely made a sound. Without thinking, Ethan reached out his hands and gently scooped the fragile animal into his arms. The puppy's body was cold and trembling. "It's okay, little guy," Ethan whispered, holding him close. "I've got you." He carried the puppy home with great care, moving as quickly as his injured leg allowed. Once inside, he warmed some milk, cleaned the puppy's small wounds, and laid him onto a soft makeshift bed. Over the next 4 days, Ethan devoted himself to the puppy's recovery. He fed him small meals, kept him warm, and spoke to him kindly, hoping to replace whatever fear lived inside those hopeless eyes. Slowly, the puppy began to trust him. His tail wagged weakly, then with more confidence each day. The little dog followed Ethan around the house, curling at his feet whenever he sat down. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a gentle light return to his life, companionship he never expected. Yet on the morning of the 4th day, just when everything seemed peaceful, something unexpected happened, changing everything. That afternoon, as golden sunlight spilled across the living room floor, Ethan heard an unexpected knock at his door. The sound was firm but not aggressive, almost cautious. He slowly made his way across the room, wondering who could be visiting him, since he rarely had guests. When he finally opened the door, he froze in place. Standing on his porch were 3 Apache women. Their posture was dignified, and their traditional shawls fluttered lightly in the warm breeze. Their faces held a mixture of hope and worry, and for a moment, Ethan couldn't find his voice, startled by their solemn presence. Before he could speak, the woman standing in the center stepped forward with a quiet grace. Her voice was soft yet steady, carrying the weight of concern. "We're searching for a missing puppy," she said gently. "A little one from our community's rescue shelter." Ethan's heart skipped. He immediately understood who they were talking about. His eyes drifted instinctively toward the small shape resting on a blanket inside his living room. The puppy, now stronger and healthier, had become his companion these past few days. He hadn't considered that someone might be looking for him. Ethan carefully picked up the puppy, who blinked sleepily and nestled into his arms. As he approached the door, the women leaned in, their expressions shifting from tension to overwhelming relief. The moment they saw the tiny dog, they gasped softly, hands rising to their lips. The eldest woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening. She knelt down slowly and extended her hand. The puppy sniffed her gently before wagging his tail with unmistakable joy. It was clear he recognized her, someone who had cared for him long before Ethan found him abandoned and starving behind the dumpster. The woman lifted her gaze to Ethan's face, and her expression softened with gratitude. "Thank you," she said in a warm, sincere tone. "Most people look away when they see suffering, but you didn't." Her words settled deeply into Ethan's heart. He wasn't used to receiving kindness or praise. Most days, people ignored him, mocked his limp, or passed by without noticing him at all. Hearing someone acknowledge the goodness he tried to hold onto felt strangely healing, as though the world was offering him something he'd never expected, recognition. Another woman stepped forward, holding a small handcrafted bracelet made from braided leather and decorated with tiny beads. She placed it gently in Ethan's hand. "This is for you," she said. "A token from our community. You showed kindness when others showed cruelty. We honor people like you." Ethan stared at the bracelet, touched by its simplicity and meaning. He had never received anything like it before. To him, it was more than a gift, it was a reminder that compassion, no matter how small, mattered deeply to someone. The puppy whimpered softly, leaning forward toward him one last time. As the women prepared to leave with the puppy, Ethan stood quietly at the doorway, watching them walk down the path. He felt a surprising mix of sadness and warmth. Sadness from letting go of the little friend who had brightened his lonely days, and warmth from knowing he had helped return him to people who loved him. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt noticed, not as someone broken or weak, but as someone who made a difference, however small. A simple act of kindness had reached farther than he imagined,